Let's make one thing painfully clear. Trust is not a virtue. It's a vulnerability. And the more you hand it out freely, the faster the world learns exactly how to break you. You've been told your whole life that trust is the foundation of love, of friendship, of leadership. That to trust is to connect, to build, to grow. But let's ask a question no one dares to say out loud. What has trust actually given you? How many people have you trusted, truly trusted, who turned away when you needed them most? How many secrets have you shared, thinking it made the bond stronger, only to have them used against you later? How many times have you assumed someone had your back, only to discover they were holding the knife? And worse, how many of those betrayals did you blame on yourself? Telling yourself you should have seen it coming, telling yourself they didn't mean it, telling yourself it was your fault for expecting too much. But here's the truth no one will say. They didn't betray you because you were wrong to trust them. They betrayed you because trust is a weapon when held by the wrong hands. You think trust is a mutual agreement. It isn't. It's a silent gamble, and most people aren't even playing the same game as you. While you were offering honesty, they were measuring advantage. While you were opening your soul, they were calculating leverage. You were taught that vulnerability brings intimacy. They learned that vulnerability creates control. So the question is not, should I trust people? The real question is, do they even know what to do with that trust, besides exploit it? And if they don't, if most people see trust not as a gift, but as a weakness, why are you still handing it out like it costs you nothing? This isn't about paranoia. It's about strategy. It's not about closing yourself off from the world. It's about understanding that in a world full of masks, being sincere is dangerous unless you understand the rules. The world will not reward you for being open. It will punish you for being easy to read, because when trust is blind, it doesn't build bridges. It invites predators to cross. You weren't born trusting. You were taught to trust. From the moment you could walk, you were told, tell the truth. Be honest with your friends. Trust your teachers. Trust your parents. Trust the system. Trust was painted as noble, the sign of a kind heart, a good person, a well-raised child. You were taught that good relationships are built on trust, that love dies without it, that friendships fall apart in its absence, that leaders must inspire it. But no one ever told you what to do when your trust becomes a weapon pointed at your own back. Think back, all the people you were told to trust. Did they all deserve it? Did they all protect it? Or did some of them teach you the sharpest lessons of betrayal? That family member who said, you can tell me anything, until they used your secrets as weapons. That friend who promised loyalty until it became convenient to disappear. That boss who said, we're like a family here, right before you got cut loose. That partner who said, I'd never hurt you, as they quietly rehearsed the betrayal in their mind. And yet, you blamed yourself. You thought maybe you were too sensitive, too trusting, too emotional, because the world doesn't blame those who betray. It shames those who trusted. The truth? You were conditioned, programmed, to believe that trust is always good, that being open is being human, that giving people the benefit of the doubt is mature. But all it did was set you up to feel guilty for your own survival instincts, to second-guess your gut, to silence your own alarms. Here's what they never taught you. Trust is not a default. It's a privilege, one that must be earned, tested, and reevaluated over time, not handed out like candy in exchange for warmth and approval. You've spent your life thinking that distrusting others makes you cold, that pulling back makes you bitter. But maybe, just maybe, it makes you awake, because what they called paranoia might have actually been protection. What they called distance might have been wisdom. And what they called overthinking was your instinct begging you to see clearly. So ask yourself, were you taught to trust, Or were you trained to ignore the truth? Let's talk about why betrayal always finds you. It's not because you're unlucky. It's not because you're too emotional. It's because you're predictable. And predators love predictable people. You see, those who seek to manipulate others don't need brute force. They don't need to raise their voice, make threats, or wear masks. All they need is your trust. Because once you trust someone, you give them the keys to your inner world, your fears, your habits, your patterns. They learn when you stay silent to keep the peace. They notice when you apologize for things that aren't your fault. They watch how much you reveal, how quickly you forgive, how badly you want to be accepted. And then they build a strategy around that. Trust to them is not a gift. It's a map, a roadmap to your weak spots, to your insecurities, to the pressure points they can press when they want compliance, affection, or silence. You think someone is opening up because they feel safe with you. Sometimes that's true. But often they're studying you, mirroring your emotions, mimicking your values, so you let your guard down just enough for them to get what they want. And here's what makes it worse. They don't need to betray you right away. The best manipulators are patient. They wait. They let the trust build. They let you feel safe. They let you believe this time is different. Then they strike. Maybe it's when you're most vulnerable. Maybe it's when you have something they need. Maybe it's when you're finally convinced you've found someone real. And that's when it happens. Because the betrayal isn't accidental. It was always an option. And the more trust you gave, the more power they had to use it against you. This isn't paranoia. This is the rule of the game you were never taught. The more they know, the easier you are to break. And trust, unfiltered, unearned, unconditional trust, is like handing someone the blueprint to dismantle you. The worst part? They'll still smile while they do it, because they know it's not cruelty that breaks people. It's kindness, weaponized, disguised, perfectly timed. So ask yourself, are you building relationships on trust, or are you leaving a trail of access points for those who already know how to find them? Niccolò Machiavelli never wrote a chapter titled Trust. He didn't need to. His entire philosophy assumed that those who trust blindly will be devoured. Not because people are evil, but because people are opportunistic. And trust, unless weaponized, is not a shield. It's bait. In The Prince, Machiavelli makes it brutally clear. A prince must learn how not to be good and to use this knowledge when necessary. He wasn't advocating cruelty for its own sake. He was warning us, morality, when not paired with strategy, is a liability. And trust, pure, innocent trust, is one of the greatest moral assumptions we carry. Machiavelli didn't trust appearances. He didn't trust good intentions. He didn't even trust loyalty. What he trusted was control. Control of perception, control of timing, control of consequence. He believed that a ruler, just like any individual navigating a ruthless world, must learn when to appear honest, without the obligation to actually be honest. Not to deceive everyone, but to protect oneself from those who deceive as a way of life. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. He wasn't saying you should terrify people. He was saying, don't count on love to protect you. Don't assume that because you offer trust, you'll receive protection in return. The world doesn't reward sentiment. It rewards leverage. And trust, in Machiavelli's view, is not leverage, unless you're the one managing it. So ask yourself, are you trusting people because you've tested them, measured them, and found them worthy? Or are you trusting because that's what you were told good people do? Because if you believe that trust is always virtuous, you will be outplayed. Not by villains, but by those who simply understand the game better than you. A prince must know how to conceal his intentions. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. That's how you survive among players who never show their hands. Trust is not just a risk. It's a gamble with loaded dice. And unless you're the one setting the rules, you're just a well-intentioned loser waiting for the fall. Machiavelli never asked you to be heartless. He asked you to be alert, to stop mistaking vulnerability for virtue, to stop assuming sincerity will keep you safe. It won't. Only clarity will. You didn't need a philosophy book to learn the danger of trust. The stories were always there. You just weren't ready to believe them. Take Julius Caesar. He trusted Brutus, not just as a friend, but as a son. He let him into the inner circle. He gave him influence. He believed in all his power that loyalty would protect him. And on the floor of the Senate, surrounded by blades, it was Brutus who cut the deepest. Et tu, Brute? Not because Caesar was weak, because Caesar trusted someone who understood power better than he did. Or look at corporate betrayal. Steve Jobs brought back into Apple the man he believed would support him, John Sculley. And with one boardroom maneuver, Sculley ousted the very person who gave him that power. Because business doesn't care about vision. It cares about leverage, and trust without control is a contract waiting to be rewritten. And what about the stories you've lived yourself? That friend who knew your secrets and shared them to win attention. That partner who promised permanence but kept doors open just in case something better came along. That colleague you defended who later stood silent when you were under attack. You were warned, not by red flags but by outcomes. The pattern is always the same. You give, they take. You excuse, they repeat. Because once someone realizes you trust without limits, they stop believing they need to earn it. But here's the tragedy. When betrayal happens, we rarely blame the betrayer. We blame ourselves. I should have known. I ignored the signs. I trusted too much. And maybe that's true. But maybe the real mistake wasn't trusting the wrong person. Maybe the mistake was believing that trust, on its own, has any protective power at all. These stories, Caesar's, Jobs's, yours, aren't anomalies. They're reminders. That trust without discernment is a countdown. So ask yourself, how many more stories do you need? How many more warnings must go unheard before you finally learn that trust isn't safety? It's a wager, and most people aren't betting in your favor. Let's get honest, really honest. Most of the time, you don't trust someone because they've earned it. You trust them because you need to believe they won't hurt you. That's not trust. That's fear. That's hope dressed up as certainty. That's your mind whispering, please let this one be safe. The brutal truth is this. Trust isn't a decision. It's a survival mechanism. It's what your brain reaches for when it can't bear the anxiety of doubt, when the loneliness of suspicion feels heavier than the risk of betrayal. You don't hand someone your heart because they've proven they'll protect it. You hand it over because you want to stop holding it alone. And in that moment, you lie to yourself. You say, they're not like the others. You say, this time it feels different. You say, I just have to believe. But underneath all that is a voice you keep silencing, the one that says, you've been wrong before. You ignore it because doubt makes you feel broken, because distrusting people makes you feel bitter, because the world says, don't bring baggage into new relationships. So you pretend you have none. You walk in empty-handed, offering trust like it's renewable, limitless, deserved by default. But that trust, it's not for them. It's for you. It's your way of soothing the ache of uncertainty. It's a ritual you perform to feel safe, even when your gut is screaming. Here's the paradox. You don't trust because you're strong. You trust because you're tired. Because it's easier to believe a lie than to live in hyper-awareness. Easier to say, we're okay, than to admit you're already seeing the signs. Easier to give someone your blind faith than to sit in the silence of your own instincts. But here's what no one tells you. You're not crazy for doubting. You're not bitter for questioning. You're not broken because you don't want to get burned again. You're awake. And in a world where betrayal wears a smile and manipulation speaks the language of love, being awake is your only real safety. So stop asking yourself, why can't I trust anymore? Start asking, why did I ever think trust was free? You've been taught that doubt is a flaw, that it ruins relationships, that it poisons love. But here's the truth. Doubt, when used with intention, isn't poison. It's armor. It's what keeps you from stepping into traps with your eyes closed. It's what pauses your hand before you give too much, too soon. It's what scans for cracks before you build something that matters. Strategic doubt is not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. It's your experience whispering, "We've seen this before. Let's slow down." The people who manipulate you don't fear confrontation. They fear clarity. They fear the moment you stop defaulting to trust and start asking questions that make them uncomfortable. Why did they deflect instead of answering? Why do I feel guilty every time I set a boundary? Why do they need so much of me, so fast? Those aren't doubts. Those are instincts trying to save you. Strategic doubt means watching without immediately reacting. It means allowing someone to show you who they are before you decide what you give them. It means choosing what to reveal, what to hold back, what to delay, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You don't owe people your trust. You owe yourself the time to evaluate them, to see not just how they act when everything is good, but how they handle discomfort, how they respond to your no, how they behave when you're not useful to them. Let them prove themselves, not with words, not with promises, but with consistency, with humility, with patience, because trust is not something you give. It's something they earn, one hesitation at a time. The most powerful people aren't the ones who trust everyone. They're the ones who've mastered selective openness, who know how to withhold without disconnecting, who know how to smile while still scanning for patterns, who know that sometimes the greatest act of love is not trust, but protection. Protection of your time, your energy, your peace. So the next time someone says, "Don't you trust me?" look them in the eye and calmly say, "Trust isn't the starting point. It's the reward." You think being open brings you closer to people. You think constant availability earns you trust. You think sharing more makes you real. But in reality, what's always present is rarely valued. Familiarity doesn't always breed intimacy. Sometimes it breeds entitlement. And the people who always know where to find you stop making an effort to truly see you. Respect isn't created by presence. It's created by perceived importance, and importance thrives in scarcity. Here's a brutal truth. If you're always reachable, you'll always be taken for granted. You believe silence makes you look cold. That distance feels like rejection. But ask yourself this: who do you respect more? The one who constantly explains themselves? Or the one who says very little, but means every word? Silence isn't emptiness. It's tension. It makes people lean in. It makes them pay attention. It creates mystery. And in that mystery, you gain power. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must avoid being too accessible, not to create fear, but to preserve weight. When you are too close, too fast, people stop listening. They stop earning your time. They start expecting it. And expectations kill gratitude. The same goes for emotional exposure. You think they'll understand you better if you bleed in front of them. But many won't admire your vulnerability. They'll store it as ammunition. They'll test your thresholds. They'll probe where you open the door, not to heal you, but to see how far they can step inside. Strategic distance is not detachment. It's emotional discipline. It's the ability to regulate access, to choose when to speak, when to vanish, and when to reappear with purpose. Let them wonder where you went. Let them miss your energy. Let your absence become a mirror for how they really felt about your presence. Stop explaining. Stop justifying. Stop reacting. Let the silence stretch long enough that their assumptions echo louder than your answers ever could, because silence doesn't make you invisible. It makes you undeniable. There comes a moment, not when you stop trusting, but when you start seeing the pattern, seeing the way people test your boundaries with fake innocence, seeing how manipulation hides in compliments, in apologies, in silence. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's when you become an anomaly, not because you're broken, but because you're no longer predictable. You stop following the script others expect you to play. You stop handing over your trust like a ceremonial gift. You stop bleeding just to prove you're human. People won't like this version of you, the unshakable one, the unreadable one, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't over-explain. You'll notice how quickly their tone shifts when you stop being emotionally available on demand, when you don't offer the same reassurances, when your smile becomes calculated, not automatic. They'll say you've changed. You have. You've upgraded. From trust addict to pattern recognizer. From validation seeker to boundary enforcer. You are no longer the person who hoped trust would save them. Now you hold trust like a scalpel, sharp, precise, deliberate, given only with intention, taken back when necessary, and never confused with weakness. When you become aware, you stop needing people to approve your instincts. You stop second-guessing your standards. You stop explaining why something just felt off, because off is enough. Off is survival. Off is your mind doing its job. Awareness is not a curse, it's liberation. But be warned, once you step into that awareness, you leave the system. You're no longer a citizen in the land of blind trust. You're an exile with vision. You are no longer a piece on someone else's board. You're the one holding the rule book. And when they try to pull you back, with guilt, with softness, with promises, you'll smile. Not because you're cruel, but because you finally understand. What they call trust, you now call temptation. And you no longer take the bait. You've made it this far, which means something inside you already shifted. The story you've been telling yourself about trust, about loyalty, about being a good person, is beginning to crack. And in that crack, truth seeps in. Not the soft truth, not the one wrapped in affirmation and kindness, but the kind that stings, the kind that makes you stop, breathe, and see the world for what it is, not what you wish it was. Now you know. That trust is not a gift. It's a tool. That betrayal isn't always personal. It's often strategic. That silence isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the right moment to move. You've seen how predictability makes you a target, how emotional overexposure invites control, how availability without scarcity erodes respect, and most importantly, you've seen that trust without awareness is just a countdown to regret. So now comes the only part that matters. What are you going to do with this? You can nod, feel inspired, and then go back to offering your trust like it's unlimited. You can keep giving people access they haven't earned. Then wonder why they walk out the door holding pieces of you. Or you can start the shift, not with anger, not with walls, but with strategy, with pause instead of explanation, with silence instead of validation, with presence that is chosen, never assumed. You start by changing one conversation, one reflex, one reaction. You don't owe the world your openness. You owe yourself discernment, because now you've seen the blueprint. And if you pretend you haven't, you're no longer just naive. You're choosing to be devoured. So here's your signal. If this video reached a part of you no one talks to, a part of you that's tired of being soft just to survive, leave this phrase in the comments. Trust is the reward, not the requirement. Let's see who heard the message. Let's see who's ready to stop surviving and start rewriting the rules. Because in a world full of players, you only have two options: be the game or be the one who gets played.